very hearty good evening to all the participants out there in the weekend talk organized by Safety Engineering Management and Analytics by IIT Kharagpur. This program is conducted under Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, commemorating 75 years of India's independence. Today is Deepavali, the festival of lights, the festival of the winning of over the evil. So I thought to start this program today with beautiful lines of Gopal Das Neeraj, which says that वक्त को जिसने नहीं समझा उसे मिटना पड़ा है, बच गया तलवार से तो फूल से कटना पड़ा है, क्यों ना कितनी बड़ी हो क्यों ना कितनी कठिन हो, हर नदी की राह को चट्टान से हटना पड़ा है, उस सुबह की संधि कर लो, हर किरण की मांग भर लो, है जगह इंसान तो मौसम बदल कर रहेगा, जल गया दीप तो अंधियार ढल कर रहेगा. With this, we initiate our program with the beautiful shloka, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityu ma amritam gamaya. And today we have our expert speaker with us, Mr. M. Sant Swarup Sharma. He is a consultant from McKinsey, and with a very interesting topic, integrating safety and quality in building organizational culture using MOS model. So Mr. M. Sant Swarup Sharma is currently working as a consultant with McKinsey on subjects such as behavioral safety, Six Sigma, leadership coaching, and he has about 36 years of total experience and excellence in the industry. He was also an expert consultant of DuPont for more than 20 years. He served Tata and associated companies for about 26 years and headed their various departments during these years, which include quality assurance and application engineering department, marketing and sales division, finishing large operation units, logistics, industrial engineering, management training, and the list is nearly endless, ladies and gentlemen. He also headed the HR and administration department for 5 years. He is a qualified master black belt in LSS BB and have mentored more than 30 black belt and lean projects and 125 green belt projects. So he trained about 250 green belts as well. He was head of safety, health and environment and projects department. He played a major role in implementing the safety of DuPont Wayne Tata Steel in newly built cold rolling mills. He also worked in JSW Steel for about 11 years, during which he headed the plant control and made a robust system and SAP implementation at JSW. So he's a certified trainer of behavioral safety from DuPont, USA, and have trained more than 3,000 officers in behavioral training. He's also a qualified Master Six Sigma Black Belt and a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt trainer. He's conducted various talk sessions, workshops on subjects like leadership, management, business excellence, problem-solving techniques, and innovativeness. So today we are privileged to have such a great speaker within us. And I request our chairman, CoE-SEA, Professor Maiti, to formally welcome our expert speaker. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mr. M. Sant Swarup Sharma. Thank you for accepting our request and giving a lecture on an interesting topic. The topic is so interesting that you are basically trying to integrate safety, quality, as well as organizational culture and using MOS model. I'm sure that you will also be linking the productivity probably, because safety, quality, productivity, organizational culture, these are very much interrelated things. And with your vast experience as management consultant and independent consultant to many world-renowned organizations like McKinsey and DuPont, and with your experience in dealing versatile subjects, starting across all the functionaries of industrial and production systems. And I'm sure that the audience will be extremely benefited and they will be able to correlate the things that are the overlap part of safety with other functionalities of any organization. CoE-SEA, as you know, and you are well aware of that center, we are now 1 year old, but we are really now young. Even within a 1 year age, we are very young, very active, And people like you are enriching us every day, as well as you, we have seen that over the, I think this is the 22nd lecture. I think that before there are so many lectures and there are so many participants across the world who are participating and enriching us every day. I'm thankful to you as well as to all the participants for to you for giving, accepting and giving this lecture, and for the participant who is supporting every week to all of us. They are our motivation. So with this note, I request Professor Mr. Samsar Sharma, please give your valuable talk today.
Okay, so good
Yeah.
evening to all. And to start with, let me thank Professor Maiti, Professor Obi Krishna, and of course my fellow friends. As Professor Maiti put in, I'm not such a big guy, not such a great guy, because I've been hearing a lot of CoE lectures almost every Friday, and most of them are goes above my head because there is so much of analytics, there is so much of 4.0 manufacturing, and oh my God, so much of data analytics and things like that. So my presentation today would be based on my experience. I mean, like, for the last 26 years that I've been with Tata Steel and the associate companies, and with the 11 years that I spent with JSW Steel. And these two steel plants today are the epitome of success. And we all know that today, from about 100 billion tons of steel, we are on our march and on our way to produce over 300 million tons of steel. And steel companies, by and large, are definitely one of the most hazardous steel plants in the world. And I had the opportunity to see most of the steel plants in the world. I have seen all the steel plants in Japan, all steel plants of Nippon Steel and JP and Sumitomo, and most of the steel plants of ArcelorMittal in Johannesburg in US and others. And of course, also the other EBG group steel plants in Germany, Spain, and France. So, based on this experience and being a Lean Six Sigma black belt preacher, I preach and I teach Six Sigma, and I have gone through personally all the models of quality management, starting from ISO 9000. Today, of course, it's called the Integrated Management System 2015. I've actually personally gone through the total productive system by Professor Ando and Professor Kano, and I've seen the two Deming cycles. I'm probably one of the few guys in the steel industry to see through the two Deming cycles. One, of course, in Tata Steel, and of course, the next one is in JSW Steel, and also have seen and worked with DuPont, both with Tata Steel and JSW Steel. So, my talk today would be how do we integrate this particular thing called safety and, of course, the quality management systems. There are various quality management systems. And, of course, we have to do some sort of a benchmarking. And how do we bring about a culture? Because if we don't have culture in an organizations, no amount of systems will work. So today I'm going to lay a lot of emphasis on this culture building. And this is what it shows, integrating safety through the safety model, integrated management, and of course, producing to culture. And quickly, let me go to the next slide. Now, this is what exactly is the MOS. There is nothing actually called MOS model. This is my way of looking at it, because the M basically talks about the Begol's factor model, which is basically the triangle of quality. The one end of the quality of this triangle talks about the product operation, which basically talks about correctness, usability, efficiency, reliability, and integrity. And they also talks about the other part of the triangle, talks about the product revision, which is maintainability, flexibility, and testability. So when I talk about the efficiency, of course, we also talk about the overall equipment efficiency, as Professor Maiti wanted. This model is basically again talks about the operation equipment efficiency. And as far as the transition of the model of the McGraw triangle talks about is the portability. Now, this particular McGraw's model, which has software requirements into 11 software factors, The 11 factors are grouped into three categories, as I said: the product operation, the product revision, and the product transition. And this is basically a software. Now, this software was developed because there are so many quality systems. For example, you have integrated management systems, you've got ISO, you've got Deming, you've got TPM, you've got the balance scorecard. So a lot of people actually fail to be with these systems. So therefore, this particular software, which is the McGraw triangle of quality, addresses it addresses all the facets. Now, so I will deal a little bit more in detail about this McGraw triangle of quality. And the second part is the organization, which is the march for safety, the organization for safety. And the third is, which I'm not going to touch upon so much, the S part of it is strategic benchmarking, which looks at other companies to do capability, strategic initiatives, the competitive product development, and other long-term quality processes. So therefore, these three factors, which is this triangle plus the organizational safety culture, and of course the benchmarking, would leave and move towards the culture. Now, when we look at the McGraw's factor model, we have four levels here. Here, what we basically call is the first level is the heroes. The second one is the definition phase. Any organization has to go through these four by the time it reaches world class. So level 3 is managing people, and level 4 is quantitative manage, where the processes and the KPIs are in place. There is a very big similarity between the John Maxwell's 5 steps of leadership. As you all know, John Maxwell today is one of the top Harvard professor who basically is now into leadership programs, where he talks about the position, the first stage, which is the position where people follow them because they are directed to. Now, this is an autocratic type of system where the position, say a vice president says something, people have to follow whether they have little choice. Now, the second stage in which the organization moves from the position state is the permission state, where in the permissive state, it focuses on building and growing relationship. Now, here is where the team members are given permission to lead. And I have seen this type of organization, both Tata Steel and JSW. And the third stage, which John Maxwell says is about the productive stage, which focuses on results. This is where the people follow them, the leaders, because they trust the person, and they also trust the person because of who he is, and also because of the direction shown by the leader. And then we have the pinnacle stage, where the leaders have followers, and people know whom to follow. And there is a thing which comes in the last stage, where the leader plays a little less role. Let me give you a small example, where Hillary and Tenzing, when they were climbing the Mount Everest, they've all gone through the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage, and the history. But the moment when they reached the Mount Everest, Hillary took the photograph of Tenzing and says, "Hey, Tenzing, you are the first person to reach the Mount Everest." And Tenzing wanted to reciprocate the same, but Tenzing said it is not required. So this is where the leader focuses on his subordinates and on his people, and he gets the people gets it. So the organization, as a cultural, it evolves and it moves into all these 5 stages. Now, when we look at the culture quickly, see, when you look at, I don't know why this animation is not working, but you see there is a huge culture. For example, in the Muslim countries, you'll find the ladies having this type of culture. And in terms of organizations, people wear the earmuffs and people go wearing helmets into the organization. It's a culture. But in some of the organizations, the culture ends there. They think that just wearing a helmet, wearing a safety shoe, wearing a earmuff, and going into the organizations or going to the workshop is probably a culture. In my opinion, that is only the first step towards organization culture. And of course, the third part is where we need to think. And this is a model where I've seen it in Japan and also in other Korean countries and other countries, where people down below are made to think, and continuously they are told to show continuous improvement. And I have seen organizations who are having this type of culture of continuous improvement on a day-to-day basis are the ones who are basically leading towards world class. Let me tell you a small story about this Amish. This had been to Pennsylvania, and one of the sightseeing when you go to Pennsylvania is this particular village called the Amish village. Uh, this Amish is a group of traditionalist Christian church, and they're a Christian church of origins. The Amish are known to be very simple living, plain dress, Christian pacifism, and very slow to adopt many conveniences of modern technology. So when you go to this particular place in Amish, you will find that people even today they don't use mobiles, and they wear very simple dresses. Their symmetries after death is all constant, is all simple, and all men wear the same type of dresses. All the ladies wear the same type of dresses, and even today the children go to school in such cart. So it is their culture. Now, many a time when we had interacted with some of these people in Amish, so they are not ready to change. So culture also comes with people. It comes with a lot of habit. It comes with a lot of history. And, like for example, even in the Indian culture, we have touching the feet of the senior people, the older people, and all that. And in great organization, the culture, of course, is there, which builds in. And you'll find most of the top managing directors always talking about how to build a positive culture. And so, what I would do is we will move on to the next statement, where we talk about more of culture in an organizations and how this culture gets built in by various quality models, because these quality models basically helps us and the organization to do more of thinking and continuous improvement, and that is what brings about a culture. Now, when you look at the mission statement in an organizations, you have the HSE policy, you have the annual reports, you have the performance, you have the leadership commitment for safety, and things like that. Now, the six most okay. Now, before that, I will come down to I will come down to the demonstration, which is actually done by great organizations. Leadership commitment to safety is something which you can see in some good organizations. Employee involvement and motivation is something which you could see. Employee values, beliefs, assumptions, you could see. Employee perceptions of safety at their workplace, you could see. And every company desires safe operations, but the challenge is to translate them into action. We are doing a small consultancy on from the sausage solution to the Vilai Steel. Vilai Steel being again a public sector, it is becoming very difficult to change their culture, because in 2021, how quickly do you adapt to the changes is again another important thing, and which actually is talked about the leadership. And the culture is actually defined as an unwritten standards, norms that shape the mindsets, attitudes, and behavior. And in some of the organizations, you will find that people have the ISO 9000 certification. People do have this 16949 certification, but somehow people lose their track the moment when it comes to safety and other improvements. And setting expectations, building structures, teaching, demonstrating stewardship, truly embedded into the organization is what we call. Let me tell you another small story of the cold rolling mill, which happened and way back in 1998, when we had gone down to see the first cold rolling mill of the Nippon Steel in Chiba Works. And the moment when we get into the works, it took us about 1 hour to get ourselves absolutely into earmuffs and helmets and shin guards, safety shoes. And then, of course, there was a safety talk, and we were not used to this. So when we asked the people from Nippon Steel, they said, no, this is the way we actually have to do, because every visitor and, this is our culture, that whoever comes in has to get in through this, have to go through the safety talk. Now, that was something very new way back in 1996, 97. And of course, today it's become a norm in most of these great organizations. So the moment when we came back from the visit, I remember Mr. Muthuraman, who happened to be the vice president then, and he asked us, what is it that you have learned? So we said, yeah, we've learned more about the cold rolling, the 6-high, and all the technology. He said, no. What is it that you've learned about the people? So then when we told him that, this is the first thing when you enter into a steel plant, now this is what is seen, and this is what we have said. So he says, yes, this is what we have to imbibe, both in Tata Steel, because cold rolling mill was the first such a very heavy investment and one of its kind in the country. So such was the beginning of building up a culture in Tata Steel. And I still remember from 1996 to way back about 2005 to 2006, wearing a shin guard, wearing a helmet, wearing safety shoe across the organization, including the union category, all the visitors became a norm. And after some time, it became a habit. So one of the important things which comes in building up a culture or a safety culture is building up the habit. And building up a habit actually does not take place in 2 months or 3 months or 1 year, 1.5 years or 2 years. You actually have to go through a very huge cycle after cycles and improvements. And quickly, I'll tell you how exactly we have gone through. So improving the safety culture requires a determination, stamina, long-term focus, commitment, and of course, willingness to walk the talk. And beyond, it's actually beyond campaigns and posters. So this is what I have seen in most of the outside world. Now, when you look at the safety culture through safety leadership, Dean and Kennedy provides a succinct and simple definition of culture as the way things get done around here. Now, this is what I've seen it in Mahindra's. When I've been to Mahindra, the car manufacturing company, where I'd actually gone down to see the how the debbing is applied. In the machine shop, I found the photograph of the person there. The operator himself cleans the entire place of his. He puts his mobile number there, and to the extent that every 1 hour he takes a 10 minutes break and he cleans the whole stuff. Whereas in other plants and other areas, I've seen that there are people who basically come from outside and clean the surface. So when I asked them, is this only machine shop that every person who is responsible, and he writes his name, he writes his photograph, and he says, I am responsible and accountable for safety and quality in my area. So I did approach one of the operators and I asked him, since how long have you been there? He says, I've been here for the last 4 years, and this is what I always do. And more importantly, apart from him doing it, he also coaches and mentors people in the operation who've come new. So that is the way the Mahindras work, and they call it as the Mahindras way. So in a company where there is actually a display of huge mission statement and others, you will find that the Mahindras, Tata Steel, and other big steel plants have their own ways. Today, people are calling it as JSW way. People are calling it as the Nippon Steel way. And I've been to a small, the latest steel plant, which is in Arkansas, which is called the Big River Steel, and they also have now started coining this word, which is called the Big River Steel way. Okay. Now, coming back to some of the areas as to what is culture in the manufacturing company, it is actually essentially the personality of a company. But today, the way personality is there, even the organization from outside is looked as a personality. And I would take the story of POSCO, which in my opinion is a benchmark for all the steel plants in the world. And this is not I am saying, but this is the World Steel Association. For the last 10 years, they have been doing a lot of data collection and trying to find out which steel plant is the best in terms of productivity, in terms of safety, in terms of HR processes, in terms of purchase processes, and they got about 22 parameters based on which they actually rate the steel plant. And POSCO, I've been to the cold rolling mill there, and I found the general manager when he comes down from the pulpit, he's got jute in his hand and he cleans the staircases. And he goes back to an area where it was not cleaned properly. I mean, that is the first time I have seen in my life that the GM of the unit cleaning the staircase as he walks down. And believe it or not, until and unless people tell you that this is a steel plant in Kwangyang, you will not be able to say, because that is what is the cleanliness, that is the levels of pollution control these people have. Not amount, no single amount of even smoke is seen on the chimneys. So, in my opinion, this becomes a cultural issue. And the second point is like, why is the company's cultural so important? Workers are more likely to enjoy work when their needs and values are consistent. Now, this is the word. Consistency is a very, very high word, and one of the buzzwords used by most of these great industries. And of course, why are what makes a culture great? Great companies, culture supports involvement, and they also support employees. They support, which I'm going to come to in my next slide as to what are the different types of cultures which I have seen in some of these companies. Now, quickly, even if you do a small Google to find out which are the culturally the best organizations in the world, today we have the Zappos, we've got the Google, the Warby Parker, the Southwest Airlines, Twitter, and of course the Facebook. Now, some of these organizations they call themselves as great organizations, and in all these organizations, you will find some common stuff. For example, encouraging learning and open communication, insistence on open and honest two-way communication. And I remember, and I'm sure Robi Krishna also remembers, way back in 1994, 1995, when Rusi Modi was the chairman of a tin plate company and he was the MD of Tata Steel. This is what he had started off, which is called the open dialogue. And during the open dialogue, both with the officers and with the union categories, the managing director learns what are the various issues related to both to safety and to quality and even to the household. And such issues are actually taken cognizance of and they are attended to. And this particular has built in a huge cultural difference in Tata Steel. And I know also for sure that this was also launched at JSW Steel, where the deputy managing director had started. And after 2 years, he said, I have learned so much about the organization from the people down below that has given a very high impetus on the cultural change. Because let us remember one fact that the moment such issues are raised by the downline people in terms of safety and all things related to quality or related to any of the processes or related to any of the things which they are finding deficient in their houses, their colony, things are attended quickly and they're attended very fast way. So this cultural change, which you find in great organizations, offers employees on-site health and fitness centers, which we have seen it in good organizations, health club memberships, and of course personal training and insists employees which takes regular breaks. Important thing is in this circle one should also look at it. Actually, the cultural change in an organization starts off with self, where we have the motives, strengths, and limitations. And then comes how the leader basically leads in that organization to bring about that cultural change. What is it that the leader does to bring that change? And of course, what is his creation? So, in my opinion, culture building in an organization is actually a journey uh, from self to the organization levels, which again is corroborated by James Maxwell's 5 steps of leadership. It actually starts with self and then it moves on to the organization, and that actually takes quite amount of time. Okay. Now, when we look at some of the safety systems at NASA, we look at Nippon Steel and JFE Steel, and then, of course, we also look at Toyota. See, the safety systems in the NASA, when you relate to the engineering and management principle criteria and techniques to achieve acceptable mishap risk within the constraints of operation, the accident can be said to be flowed from a deficient safety culture not only at the Chernobyl plant, which we all know, but throughout the Soviet design, operating, and regulatory organizations for nuclear power, which existed at the same. The safety culture requires total dedication. It For all the nuclear plants is primarily generated by the attitude of the managers of the organization, where a lot of impetus is given in the attitude of people. And when we go to when you go to any of the steel plants of Nippon Steel, or you go to JP Steel in Japan, or you go to any of these plants in Europe, you will find the major five core elements related to safety programs. One is the safety culture, which is the employee training. The training is one of the most important thing, and which we all know, both in Tata Steel, JP Steel, and others. This was a very highly impetus, and a lot of focus was given on training on safety. Now, the other one is the HERA, which is the hazard identification systems, which today we are saying that all these hazards have to be seen at the design stage itself. Then, of course, there's a continuous improvement. And this continuous improvement is again a part where most of these, the Deming award companies, they insist upon, and they say ki, yeah, inspire all facets of people, whether it's the lowest to the highest, people have to start thinking about continuous improvement in the way these people actually address their daily organizations. And the most important is, how does an organization evaluate and enforce certain principles and certain philosophies of life? Let's look at Toyota. Now, I had been to Ann Arbor, which is the University of Michigan, and I spent 3 days with Professor Likert, who actually preaches the Toyota way. And one of the things which I had seen there was the implementation of the 14 principles of Toyota. And this has become now an engineering MS, one of the subject to all the students. And there people are taught as to how Toyota has now become the world's largest car manufacturers, and what are the principles, and how do they actually address the maintenance, how do they address the maintainability, what is MTTR, for example, time to repair, what is MTBF, and the major philosophies in terms of productivity and also on safety. So they call it as the TPS way, which is the Toyota production system. And there is a book which is available with Professor Likert. Whoever wants to read it can go through. And some of the management institutes in Hyderabad, I have seen that people have taken it as a subject in the operation excellence during their tenure in their MBA program. So such is the the way the Toyota people work. Now, quickly, let's look at this is another very important curve, which we call as the Bradley's curve. Now, this is the 2-point Bradley curve. Now, what they say is uh, when you look at the 4 stages in order to build a culture in an organization, the first stage is a reactive stage, and the second stage is dependency. So when we look at the reactive stage, the safety it comes by natural instinct. The compliance to safety is the goal, and of course, delegation to safety managers and a lack of management involvement is what we actually see in the Bradley's curve as the first stage, where we say is external motivation compliance, where we have a lot of rules, we have a lot of procedures, and we have a lot of protocols. And once we mature in the reactive stage, we come to the second stage, which is dependency, where we are, there's a management commitment from people. There are conditions of employment. Now, let me elaborate on this condition of employment. If you go to Praxair within the steel plant, one of the thing which is written as a principle or as a cardinal rule is that if you don't behave the way the organization wants, then you may be, sacked for whatever reasons. So therefore, today people are becoming a little bit more serious, and it is now saying that your employment is basically a condition to safety. Now, of course, in the second stage of supervision, there's still some amount of fear, and of course, there's a discipline issue. For example, people wear helmets inside the works, people wear the seat belts as they go inside the works. But the moment when they get outside the works, and when they're into the city, most of the people have a tendency not to wear not to wear the seatbelt. So there is fear, there is a discipline issue. Then, of course, we have rules and procedures. Then the supervisory control, emphasis and goals, and value for people, and of course, a lot amount of training. Now, this is what happens in the first two stages of the Bradley curve. And once you go through, and once it takes about roughly 2.5 years, as per DuPont, then you reach the second stage, which is called the internal motivation commitment, where we see the felt leadership, where we see a lot of role modeling, where we see influencing, where we see engagement. Now, this is what is the most important. How do you engage people in the organization? That is the time the third stage comes in, which is the self. In this stage, people become knowledgeable, they are committed. A lot of standards are seen. The organizations like of course ISO 9000 standards are some of the standards, but then you have standards for removing dirt. You have standards for productivity. You got standards for HR, and standards on KPIs and things like that. And a lot of things gets internalized, and a lot of personal value is also attributed, and practices and habits becomes a part of the part and parcel of the organization. And I know the poor people who are basically the people who are associates and people who are workers from the house. The moment when they leave the house, they have their helmets, they have their safety shoes, they have their shin guards, they have their ear muffs, and some to some extent, I know that even the family members also help them or help the poor worker, that all these safety gadgets are there with him while he leaves home. So that is the time when when the culture of the organization moves from supervision to self, and finally is a team game. It becomes interdependent. मतलब यहाँ ऐसे ही होता है, like the Mahindra's way, the Toyota way, the Tata Steel's way, the JSW way. मतलब कि you don't have to tell people to get into a safety PPEs. People are not told all the time to revise the standards. The ISO 9000 certification happens automatically. Now, this is the automatic stage. Now, this is what is the Bradley things. Bradley calls it as care for others and organizational pride. So the point here I'm trying to make is, in the first two stages, they say I follow the rules because I have to. But the moment the organization moves into a cultural this thing, then they say I follow the rules because I want to. Now there's a difference between two, and this takes time. And one other thing which I have seen which works, and today also we talk about the STOP program, which is the safety training observation program, which basically provides a path to workplace safety excellence by making safe behavior of the workplace, and it also creates conditions and which leads to a better work culture, preventing injuries and incidents. So quickly, this is what we actually do when we go for an observation program. The 7 steps we follow. One is, of course, the sensing of safe and unsafe situations. We stop the unsafe act by getting the attention of the person. We encourage the positives. We engage them to find out what consequences would this particular thing would lead to. What are the other areas of concern of this particular area? Then, of course, we agree to be safe in all the time. And this particular Mahamrityunjaya mantra, which the DuPont and other large organizations have seen, and I've seen this happening both in Tata Steel and JSW Steel and other areas where they actually want to do the improvement. This 7-step process of interaction and across the organization, when people start interacting and when they do the safety observations, say once in a week or twice a month, depends on which level you are in, and based on what the management wants, is what is actually the 7-step process. And I've seen that it has given a great amount of results. Okay, now coming back to the safety culture maturity, again, this is the Centis safety culture maturity model, again, which talks about counterproductive in the first stage, the public compliance in the second stage, private complications, mature. Now, this model also describes as a journey organization. Now, so let's quickly move on. So this is what is the culture of an organization, and it takes a lot of time to build this culture. Now, there are 11 tenets of safety culture which I've seen. The definition of, yeah, so yes. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we are listening to you.
Yes, sir.
Message, go ahead.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah, so the slides are, the slides are, the slides are not moving. Okay, now, okay. Okay, now why the slides are jumping? Okay, now here is where I was wanting to talk about a little bit on the different types of culture. We have the just culture, because the flexibility culture, because the reporting culture, and the safety commitment culture. And there are about 11 tenets of a safety culture. And the culture as defined here is by the Joint Commission accreditation manuals, which defines culture as the product of individual and group belief, values, attitudes, perceptions, competencies, and patterns that determines the organization's commitment to quality and patent safety. So this is the definition as by the patent safety system. Now, coming down to various types of cultures. Now, this is very, very important to understand. Uh, the first part is the informed culture. In the information stage, we collect and do a lot of analysis of relevant data. We prevent complacency, the absence of incidents. We always act on the warning signs, weak signals. We doesn't focus on the helicopter view. Now, this is something which I've learned with the Japanese people. The Japanese people always have a tendency to go at the workplace, which means, they call it go gembutsu, which means go at the workplace and see, rather than sitting in their offices and taking a decision. So going to the workplace, interacting with people, understanding the processes, seeing what the standards are, revision of standards, see what a kaizen can be taken. Now, at a drop of a hat, the Japanese people get this word called kaizen. That means, what we call it as an SAM, safety action meeting. So any issues related which is coming down from the green, when the moment it goes onto the orange, or when the orange goes onto the red, we find that it has to be informed. The second part of the culture is a reporting culture. I still remember in the initial days of the DuPont implementation in Tata Steel, people were reluctant to inform or to report some of the near miss incidents and also some of the accidents, because there was always a worry that people may be pulled, and people may be some of the contractors, they could lose their contracts and things like that. But it did take some time for to come out of this fear. So therefore, the incident reporting and investigation, how do we learn? What is it that we have learned by this is something which comes in the reporting culture. Safe performance and corrective actions. What are the various corrective actions we have taken? So people should not be afraid. In a good cultural organization where you have reporting cultures, that means every day in the morning, people, they have a safety talk right from the morning. The first thing is people, they talk about safety. They have a safety talk and they see what are the various near miss incidents. They act upon it. Building trust should be pursued. Now, this is something very, very important from the organization cultural angle. The risk is also important, which is how do we improve on risk, constantly engaging the frontline employees. And we all know that safety today in all great organizations has moved from the safety department to as a line manager function. Develop effective remedial actions. Let me tell you a small story again where I think Mr. Ovi Krishna was involved in this. Way back in again early 2000, when we had this problem about the crane in the batch drilling furnace, and traditionally a crane was one of the last things seen by any project people. They always concentrate on the machinery, on the equipments, on the technology, but crane was always taken to be granted that yes, there are people who work and therefore and we had a huge issue related to the pulpit of a batch annealing furnace crane, which stands at about a seven-storied building. And the person who was sitting on that crane, the ergonomics was very, very poor. But I remember that we had reported this as a part of improvement process. And I still remember our vice president, Mr. Muthuraman, at that point of time, climbed up that huge height, and he felt that yes, there is a problem. And then the leadership has come as a beautiful role, and quickly within a week's time, this problem was looked at. We went to Bilai, we went to other places. We looked at the ergonomic cabins, and the ergonomic cabin with the air conditioned cabin came back in early 2000. And today, when I joined JSW Steel, when we looked at the similar type of cranes, all cranes at the design stage itself were ergonomically built, air conditioned, and the environment was fantastic. Even a small toilet was attached to such cabins because they move huge ladles of steel worth about 150 to 200 tons or 250 tons. So the point I'm trying to make is in a cultural organization where people are proved, there's a lot of learning and there's a lot of active involvement. And most important is this management who plays a very, very important role and a very key role. Okay, now, so that was the learning culture. Let me tell you a little bit on Nippon Steel philosophy, which is again GFE and POSCO. It is across the organization, you'll find to recognize safety as the core of the corporate management, continuous improvement, promote activities for health in the workplace. These are all boldly written across the organization. They follow it. And I've seen it myself that, it is a cultural shift, which I've seen both in Tata Steel and in JSW Steel, because they had incorporated a lot of Japanese way of living. The safety at Toyota works, which I've seen it written, and I've seen it the Toyota works both in India and in Japan, and I see that they are committed to work safely to their. Now, this is the word called commitment, very high level of commitment. There's a continuous improvement, and of course, Toyota wants to become the leader in the work through safety equipment. And let me tell you another very small story which happened with JSW. The Toyota MD came to JSW Steel, and there was a huge. There's the first round because we all know that manufacturing any type of steel is easy, but to manufacture the outer skin panels, which is the outside portion of the car body, is very, very difficult. And it was very difficult till the year about 2008 to 2009, and it requires a huge amount of technology. So when Toyota MD came to JSW to understand what JSW would do to supply steel. So, the entire presentation was done and we had given the contents or the to start. So we said we're going to talk about the plant, we'll talk about technology, we will talk about the people, we'll talk about resources. And last May, there was also said, sir, the last session will be on safety. And believe it or not, sir, to all the participants, the Toyota MD said, sir, would you mind if we start from safety? And the safety person was not there, and the hue and cry. So the point I'm trying to make is that is the focus given by Toyota, and he says if you are able to produce safe steel, then you will be able to produce good quality steel. And I remember this coining a word called injury-free steel came from such Japanese companies, which says if you are able to produce steel to any of our companies without fatality or without blood, that would be the most important taken. So therefore, the injury-free steel was coined both in Tata Steel as well as in JSW. And today, when we produce the skin panel grade, which is IFF grade, very, very low carbon steels, such steels we produce and we give it to some of the contractors both in India and abroad. And we say, there's a statement which says, yes, we have produced the steel with very high levels of safety. Just 1 minute, okay, okay. So that's there. Now, quickly, let's look at the quality management models. We have the ISO 9000 standards, which again talks about various levels of process approach, improvement, evidence, relationship, customer focus, leadership. And mind you, when we are going through all these quality models, we also have to go through safety as a part of that. When we look at the EFQM model, yes, the EFQM model also it gives you a framework allowing organizations to determine their current level of excellence and where they need to improve their efforts. The fundamental premise of the EFEM is that excellent results with respect to customers, people, society, and key result areas. The EFQ model also talks about and also has to show a lot of evidence on safety. TPM, yes, there is a particular pillar of safety, and we all know this. Now, if you also look at Six Sigma, in JSW, I'm aware of that out of the 30 black belt projects, our boss, the DMD said at least 25% of the black belt projects must be safety related. So that is a significance which is given by the organizational leadership. The Six Sigma projects or the black belt projects should be taken also on safety. So the point I'm trying to make is quality is definitely important, but in the leading organizations today, safety also plays an equal role. And while we are taking quality to a very high level of standards, safety also becomes very, very important. Even if you look at the balance scorecard, which is again a model which is given by the Harvard University, and there is a balance scorecard model where again one of the parameters is on safety. If you look at Tata Business Excellence model, there also we talk about safety. We talk about the Prime Minister Trophy, which is a trophy which is actually a cash award given by the Prime Minister of India to the best steel plant. One of the high level of impetus is given on what are your safety results, what are your safety parameters, what are your KPIs on safety, how is it that you have lived, how is it? So please show me those presentations. And based on that, the second presentation is followed by quality and other processes as what the EFQ model. The Prime Minister Trophy model is basically based on the EFQ model. So here again, the point I'm trying to emphasize is safety does play a very, very important role while you're getting into any of these awards, like the CII awards, or you go to the Malcolm Baldrige Award models, or you go to the Deming models. All these talks about safety. And in the Deming Award, I clearly remember that we have these morning daily meetings. And the first thing people talk about is what has happened yesterday in terms of safety, what are the near misses, opening up in reporting cultures, and more and more on safety. So the point here is the total quality management also embedded in safety in the long run does play a huge amount of role in culture building. If you look at all these systems of TQM and all that, the final result is line management responsible for safety is what is coming out to be a very high level. Clear roles and responsibilities is the first thing that Deming wants. Please ensure and write and show to me what are the clear roles and responsibilities as a function where the safety becomes a very, very important part. Competencies, experiences, knowledge, skills, abilities necessary to discharge has to be seen there. Then the resources which is allocated to address the safety and the pragmatic and the operational considerations are seen. When you look at the hazard controls, what are the various things what you actually done on the HERA documents, the operation authorizations, then what are the various areas you have done to eliminate redundancies, accountability, and how do you establish consistency both in quality as well as in safety. So cost reduction, for example, even the cost reduction, and we have all seen that by reducing costs, in various operations, safety does become an important role. By doing this, the morale of the people also goes at a very high. Now, when you typically look at some of the world-class results, when you are in the beginning stage of cultural development, you get a score of 250 to 300. Now, this is, based again on 22 parameters. Now, if you get a score anywhere between 350 to 550 based on this 22 parameters, where again you have a lot of safety parameters, you have a lot of quality parameters, you are an average. But the moment you become a world-class leader, only when you score between 650 to 1,000. So industry leaders, benchmark leaders, world-class leaders. So in my opinion, if you look into this steel plant, which I have mostly worked with, POSCO, Nippon Steel, JFE Steel. Today in the country, today we have Tata Steel, we have JSW Steel. who are, of course, on the world class in terms of productivity, in terms of the product, in terms of the safety performances, and all across, if you talk about any of these resources and standards. So I come to an end, and it's about 8 o'clock now. So finally, I would like to talk about the latest steel plant, which is at Arkansas. David Stickler, who happens to be the CEO, one question was asked to him, "Sir, how are you managing 3 million tons of steel with 800 people, whereas in other organizations in the country we've got thousands and thousands of people?" So he says, dealing with people is like digging gold. When one goes on digging for an ounce of gold, you have to move tons of dirt to get that ounce of gold. So it is the people whom they are actually concentrating, and he firmly believes that if you have the right people in the organization, they are the ones who are going to bring in a revolution in quality. They are the ones who are going to bring in huge amount of safety awareness, and this is what leads the organizations to a great stuff. So that brings to an end of my presentation, sir. Thank you very much. Now I'm open to any questions or. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Very, very insightful presentations taking us to a journey of many, many industrial experiences. So I'll hand over to Sovik for further Q&A.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for this nice presentation. The talk was very informative. Sir, we have found few questions in the chat box. So I am asking some of them. One question is, sir, is safety and quality parameters and principles are interdependent? Why do many companies not follow a uniform framework for both quality and safety?
Good question. I think it's a fantastic question. It is something like, I told you the Toyota story. Everybody has a tendency to show all the good things they've done in quality, in terms of technology, in terms of, SAP implementation, in terms of people, in terms of processes. And the last thing what they actually show is safety. And the firmness, and that is why I'm saying is every system, when you look at ISO 9000 system, when you look at OSHAs, when you look at the TPM model, everyone has safety. The issue today is we give less importance to this particular subject called safety. Because we can get away with it. For example, in the earlier days, we had the Factories Inspectors Act. And I remember way back in 2000, early 2000, we could always manage the safety inspectors. But friends, today, we cannot manage the safety inspectors. We cannot manage the environmentalists. We cannot manage the pollution control board. These people have become very, very strict, and they have become more and more strict. And if you look at Japan, for example, the Chiba works, one blast furnace, 5 million tons, it is absolutely the heart of the city. So the consciousness is highly raised, and the entire organization works for that. In the Indian condition today, yes, they are very highly dependent, but as culture, as I said, they have to look at safety again as equally as quality and improvement and as people. So it's a journey. Organizations are definitely evolving to higher levels of awareness in terms of.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, sir, second question is, what are the 22 parameters based on safety culture is decided? Can you mention some of them?
Yeah. So some of the parameters is on productivity. For example, you look at the blast furnaces, you look at some of these coke oven productivity is one of the areas where it is being as a benchmark. The second thing is on the HR. What is the in terms of employees per ton of crude steel? The third thing, what are the various processes you have? The fourth should be what are the continuous improvement projects people have taken? What is the significance of kaizens taken at the lower levels of people? For example, when you are at the workers level, do you have team coming up playing? How many, before and after what we normally do? How many such projects have been taken? How many high levels projects have been taken? Cost control initiatives. From which level to which level have you reached? Now, some of the financial terms, EBITDA, for example, what was the EBITDA last year? What was it earlier? And what is it today? So, in terms of profit, in terms of your revenue, in terms of your people, in terms of your, people moving out, which is retrenchment. So, some of these, all these parameters actually play a very, very important. For example, in the case of safety, what is your LTI? What is your LTI for? How is it going down? Is it going up? What are the various initiatives the organization taken to increase or decrease those values? And it's all KPIs, key performance indicators, and they actually want to see how these numbers have actually decreased or increased. So all these for example, the WSA, when they go out for a round, it takes about a week. For example, when you look at the Prime Minister Trophy, there are 3 sets of people who go to the organization and they stay there for a week to understand all these 22 levels of parameters, and then they judge upon, and then they receive these awards. You look at CII awards. All these awards are also by people who are expert in the subject. They stay there for 4 days. They go through all the processes, right from HR to purchase to stores to safety to production to quality to customers to marketing. They go and visit all these places, and they have these KPIs seen, and they look at the trends. So that is how it is seen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, with your permission, I am taking another one. Sir, having mentioned about leadership, I desired to learn how to motivate aged employees and induct the culture of self-tutoring.
Very important question. Now, let me tell you a very bright example of Bhilai Steel Plant. See, today the average age of Bhilai Steel Plant is 55 for all the officers and above. So you teach them, and in few months or maybe few years, people leave and they go out and they superannuate. Now, this is one of the biggest problems we are facing in some of these public sectors. You look at the average age of JSW Steel is 28 years old. Average age is 28, so close to about 7,000 people, about 8,000 associates. Everybody is at the age of 28 to 30 to 31 to 32. So it is easier to inculcate and imbibe things which are in the younger age than in the older age. But yes, there is a point what you have mentioned. For people who have habit has become a little bit of the last 20 odd years, it is difficult to change. But I did see some people in the public sectors who have attained at the age of 55, 56 are, they like to change as per the leadership. And so today, the organizations having some of these old people, they have to live with it. But yes, in my opinion, there are people who are ready to change. But yes, but if they are found that they are negative, in the sense like, we do find people don't want to participate in such areas, and the old people, they are monitored, they are cautioned, and they are also some actions can be taken, because as I said, employment is a condition. In the interview letters or in your letters, it is now mentioned to all the youngsters that it is a condition of employment. Safety is a condition. That means if you don't apply or if you don't work with what the values of the organization are in terms of safety, you may be chucked out. But that's becoming very, very clear. But yes, there is still a challenge with the older people. There is a little challenge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Professor Krishna to formally provide vote of thanks to our expert speaker. Yes, sir.
So, Vic, have you put the mics of all the people off?
Yes, sir. I am. Now they can allow. Yes, sir. All the participants can now
because
unmute
this topic is quite a general topic.
Yes, sir.
I request audience, anybody want to ask? Aditya Agarwal, sir, you want to ask anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Yogeshwar, Dr. Yogeshwar. First of all, let me thanks to Mr. Sharmaji.
Yeah.
It was so nice that you have delivered a wonderful talk, and I'm feeling that I'm with you now. Okay. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity. I would like to have 2 interactions with you. Of course, a number of interactions I had with you during your course of employment with us. Toyota, you mentioned culture. Definitely, Toyota culture is much superior. I agree that. In what way, actually, because Toyota also man-machinery contacts are very high and manpower is also very high, like steel plant. What made actually the organizational values for Toyota is better, and still we could not go to that extent. What is your opinion, personal opinion?
Yeah, so Yogeshwar, thanks a lot, because we have seen the journey together of
Yeah.
DuPont and JSW Steel, and we have seen from which level you have taken to a different level.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed and I've also witnessed the levels you have taken at Dolby Steel Plant. And a good question. So let me tell you, sir, a small example which actually happened. When we went to Toyota plant in Japan just to see how the outer skill panels are actually used in the cars. So we saw 7 assembly lines, and so we were there for about 2 days. And quickly, the first thing what we did was we wanted to see their logbooks, and we found that there were no delays in the earlier day. So we were quite surprised as to how is it that you don't have delays in the assembly line, because in our steel plants, every 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, the machine has to go down at least for about half an hour or 45. And they are so used to delays. And the first thing what we look at is all the delays. So we didn't find any delays at all. The second day again, when we went and we found that the logbooks in the maintenance area, we found there no delays at all. So we approached one of the person. We said, "What is the secret behind this?" The answer is still known to me. He says, from Monday to Friday, the only thing what people do, and on a Saturday when they do the maintenance of this equipment, the only one thing they have in mind is not to have any delays in the equipment. So the moment they have these delays, there is a man-machine interface. So the most important objective of any of these people is to avoid delays. Number one, they have huge processes in place. They've got huge standards in place. Remove anything which is not there. So, and the third most important thing which I've seen is both the Toyota plant as well as in other steel plants in Nippon Steel and others, uh, they have the interaction, the safety talks, the moment they get into the works. Even in the case of lift, when they move, we talk about movies, we talk about everything under the planet, but those guys always says, be safe, be safe. They always point the fingers. They inside the plant, they look at the left, they look at the right, and they have the footsteps as to where exactly these people are supposed to stand and move. Overhead movement, all this movement I've seen. So the point I'm trying to make is people are very, very conscious. And yes, Yogeshwar, you're right. There is a lot of the interface. Today, a lot of robots are coming into the place. In order to get the people out and get the robots there, because more precision amount of work is done. And, robots have a huge amount of artificial thinking. So the less the interface, the better it is. So more and more towards automation, more and more towards auto-nomation, with the Japanese call it, that means auto no man. So, and today in the big river steel, we find huge amount of artificial intelligence, 4.0 manufacturing getting into the steel making. And I still know that Tata Steel is also trying to get into all the pulpits together. They're trying to get into one pulpit rather than having all pulpits to the sitter plant. Even in the case of JSW, they're looking at as to how all the steel melting shops, there are 3 of them, the 4 of them, can we have just one pulpit and having only 4 people there who manages. So the point is, with more and more automation, with more and more of a high level degree of data analytics, reduction of manpower, high motivation, and high level of this thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yogeshwar. Thank you, audience, for your reactive interaction. So this is a special talk for our weekend talks. Special in the means we have great academicians speaking deep into academics of safety, engineering, management, and analytics. And we have practitioners from industries. Very good, many practitioners, they talk about many of their own best practices. So MSS, you are one who have talked about the good practices of industries across the world, best industries across the world. Thank you. That's a very, very, very good collation of information from good industries, best industries, steel industries across the world. Thank you very much for that work. Yeah, good. It's a combining quality, safety, both work on the same principles. Many organizations are trying to form single management system. Somebody asked this question. I'm aware of the organizations who have single management system for quality and safety. After all, quality also looks for zero defect. For at product level, zero defect at the organization level. If everything is zero defect, where the incidents will happen? Will not happen. No incidents will happen. It's a very nice presentation, MSS. Lot of information you shared within the short time. Thank you very much. And thank you, moderators, Mom and her team. Did a good job. And today is a very special day. The World Cup is going on between India and Scotland. So, as usual, we cannot expect very high attendance. Still, we have more than 80 people. They're all hardcore people who want to learn really from the speakers. Thank you very much, Professor Maiti. You want to say anything?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Sharma. And from CoE-SEA, we will be in touch with you. We need your help and support.
Yeah, I see MSS is already associated with IIT Kharagpur. He had given some talks. Of course, he has become very now renowned safety specialist. So he will definitely associate with our CoE-SEA. I see some questions in the chat box that can this presentation be shared. Gentlemen, I told many times, speakers normally do not like to share the presentation, but we keep the whole talk in the YouTube. So you go to the YouTube, that will be uploaded within few days. You can download the whole talk from the YouTube, or you can take the pictures, whichever slide you want to take. You can do it. Sorry, I cannot. We cannot share the presentation to all the people because there are many restrictions from many people. So we are not asking the speakers also to share the presentation. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all, and thank you IIT for giving this opportunity to CoE for conducting these seminars. And all ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a happy Diwali. Though it is one day, still enjoy this year. This year, the Diwali moment have come, not fully at least. I see in IIT campus a lot of things happening in a controlled way. Good. By next year, I think we'll be normal. Thank you all and good night to all of you. And again, next Friday, we'll at the same time. This time we'll see with an academician speaking on safety subject on next Friday. Thank you all.
Thank you. Happy Diwali to all. Happy Diwali.
Thank you for the patient hearing, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah.